Hello guys, welcome to the class on lean production, chapter 5.3, lean production and quality management. So I hope it was clear on my mail, there's going to be two classes on this. So today we're going to talk about lean production, the next day about quality management. You guys will still be having the virtual class on Tuesday. I will do the second half of this presentation on Tuesday on a separate video. I will also on Tuesday have some videos or have a video of the exam question I just gave you guys before we had the COVID infection hitting us. So essentially, I mean, I find the Cognigy better than the textbook for this. So today I'm going to talk up to 5.3.0, 5.3.1, and 5.3.2. And then the next day it'll be 5.3.3 and 5.3.4 from the Cognigy. That's what we'll do. So I think, you know, like most operations, it's straightforward. It's common sense, but there's still a few terms that you need to learn with it. So we'll start off, what is lean production? And the Cognigy, they talk about Toyota a lot because essentially in the 1950s, 1960s, I think it was, this is where this idea of lean production was coming from a lot of the Japanese companies, particularly Toyota. The whole idea was cutting all waste out of the production process. So if something's lean, you know, if you're lean, you're in good shape, you're not carrying any waste around with you. And it's the same for lean production. It's essentially an approach to operations management that focuses on cutting all types of waste in the production process. So some companies, you know, they might hire in a lean process or a lean production consultant to come in and tell them where they can cut out waste. In my time at Maersk, we had some people like this. It's not just for the factory floor. It was originally invented for the factory floor, but also just on, you know, various, you know, customer service processes or finance process. Anything you do on a computer as well, there's ways of making the process leaner, especially if you're using different programs and there are many different people working on it and so on. But overall, lean is just removing waste, making it as efficient as possible. So another way of putting it, get rid of all the parts of the production process that do not add value. So if you're doing something and it doesn't generate value, so if it doesn't make the product or process more valuable, then stop doing it. It makes no sense. First developed by Toyota, and became popular in other countries in the 1990s in production, and now we use it everywhere. So even, you know, we can have lean meetings, for example. So if in an office, if you meet, it's basically cut out all the waste of the meeting. You know, how could you do this? Well, only have the people in the meeting who need to be there. And you might think, well, that's a bit obvious, but trust me, when you work in the corporate environment, sometimes you spend a lot of time in meetings and you realize that in these meetings, sometimes, you know, there's 10 people and we only need really 2 or 3 of them because the rest are just sitting there bored on their iPhones, you know, checking other work emails. Also, a lean meeting would be something like we be very clear on what is it we're here to discuss about, do we need a decision, and who needs to make that decision, for example. So my point here is that lean production, it started to do with production process, but now it's in any type of work. So some of you work in coffee shops, some of you work in Netto, some of you work in other places. You know, you probably, you know, goes without saying, the processes that you guys run there, they're probably trying to be as lean as they can, and you're not doing anything that no one cares about. So yeah, and then this is just one of the principles of lean production have now spread around the world, especially in the automobile industry. So a few terms, efficiency. So when we talk about efficiency, what do we mean? So efficiency and waste is something we use, we interchange how we talk about these terms, but essentially efficiency is how much gets produced compared with the inputs. So you're very, very efficient if you can get a lot of output produced with a given set of inputs. If a firm can produce more goods or services using the same or even fewer resources, then the company is more efficient. And very, very simply, an efficient company reduces costs. Why? Because for a given output, you're paying less for your inputs. So for a lot of firms, labor costs are the most expensive resource input. Labor efficiency can have a significant effect on unit costs. The more efficiently staff work, the fewer of them will be needed, or the more units they will produce in a given time, thus reducing the average labor cost. Some of you might work in hotels. There's a lot of labor cost there as well. So efficiency tends to reduce costs. It can also do some of these things here. It can increase the quality. It can increase the speed of service. So if you have a very efficient waiter, maybe they can serve multiple tables at different times. It leads to better results and more satisfaction. So I guarantee you, if you guys go to a restaurant and you're asked to rate your experience in the restaurant, a lot of it depends on the service. How efficient was the service? Were you sitting in the restaurant waiting 20 minutes to get a menu, or did you have your meals come out at the same time? My pet hate is if I go somewhere and I get my meal and then the person I'm eating with gets their meal not at the same time. I find that very inefficient. Yeah, and then of course I get even more annoyed if it's me who gets my meal later. That really irritates me. But anyway, efficiency tends to drive improvements in these three and a reduction in this here. So efficiency is good. We want efficiency. So when we're not efficient, we produce a lot of waste. There are many different types of waste. So we'll just go through these definitions and think about it in your own workplace, even I mean in your own coming to school and so on. So and going to school, what's a lot of waste in your day? You know, getting to classes, moving around classes. It takes a while for the teacher to set up the computer. Teacher gets there late. You know, things like that. That's all different types of waste. So what are the types of waste that can be removed from a production process? Well, first one there is transportation. Sorry, let's just go back. So what is waste? So waste is basically, again, we'll go back to the value component. Waste is any part of the production process that does not add value to the final consumer. So that's very broad. You know, waste, it's not just, you know, something really, really bad. It's just something that no one's willing to pay for because it's not adding any value. So if I'm waiting for my meal in the restaurant and the server wants to put my napkin, make my napkin into a flower or something, that's waste. That's waste for me because I'm not willing to pay them extra for having a paper flower on my table. It might be waste if it's for someone else, but for me, I'd just be like, give me the food. Okay. So in general, if waste can be reduced, costs are also reduced, leading to higher total profit. This is why firms care about it. So the different types of waste: transportation, moving components between workstations or from suppliers. What if you're really disorganized and have you ever been in cooking dinner? And so sometimes I'm cooking and especially if I'm someone else's house and I have to move around a lot, you know, if we don't have things in the right order, so I chop the vegetables here, put them in the pan in one place and so on. If the order of the workstations is mixed up, it becomes very wasteful. You know, we're walking across each other and things like that. The same in a factory. You know, if the workstations are not in the right order or sufficiently close to each other to ensure smooth transfer, then there's a bit of waste. Also, transporting from suppliers. You know, maybe you've got a really cheap supplier, but the problem is it takes a really long time to get your stuff there, or maybe the transport route is very unreliable. Another type of waste is inventory. Keeping too much stock, resulting in storage costs. So we talked before about just-in-time delivery. Well, some companies just like to keep stock just in case they get an increase in their sales. If you keep too much stock or excessive stock, well, this means that you have to pay storage costs on this, and this is a waste. This is a waste of money. So what is excessive stock? What do we mean? What is too much stock? Well, that depends on the situation. It's a function of the demand for your product, how quickly you can get new product delivered, and so on. So it depends. What we define as excessive stock depends on the case at hand. But this is another form of waste. You have excessive stock. You lead to higher storage costs and waste. Staff getting injured while making the product, that means they're out of action for a while, they're not working, you're paying for people not working and so on. That's a bit of waste. Delays, if one part of your process gets finished really quick and you have to wait a good while for another one, or if you do things in the wrong order. Again, I mean, always just think about cooking. If you don't cook, then start cooking, because it's a good thing to have for life anyway. But if you I always think about cooking. So if I'm doing something like I know the meat, and I'm waiting for some sauce, and the sauce was started way later, then I'm kind of like sitting there having to just put the heat down on the meat and keep it from getting overdone. This is waste, so I'm just wasting time with the heat on the meat. Over processing, so adding features to a product that are not required by the customer and therefore do not add value. Yeah, that's back to the one I just gave about the folding my napkin into a flower. Doesn't add value. I don't want to pay for it, therefore it's a waste. Overproduction, producing an inventory of finished goods before they are needed. This leads to wastage in fast-moving markets. So again, I mean, think about something that goes out of fashion quite quick. Imagine you produce, what's the iPhone 12? They have tons of this. Every store has tons of iPhone 12s, and then maybe in January, Apple come out with a new one. Then that's going to lead to a lot of waste as well. And then, of course, classic one here: if you have defects or the finished goods do not meet the quality control standards. Again, think about a restaurant. How much of a waste is it if you get served your food and you bite into your burger and you're like, okay, this burger's not cooked properly? What does the restaurant have to do? They have to throw out the burger and get you a new one. That's very much a big waste. So for me, when I'm thinking about waste, you don't need to know all of these here, but just find one activity. As you can see, I'm a bit obsessed with food, but you find something like a restaurant or something like that, and think about what's the different possible categories of waste. Inventory in a restaurant, you build up excessive stocks of beef that you have to keep there for the burgers. It costs you a lot to freeze it and store it. Eventually, because you've overproduced, you basically have to throw out a lot of these burgers because they go past their sell-by date, and so on and so on. So I think it's very realistic. Think about a service you get where you see a lot of waste, or think about it in a workplace where you also see a lot of waste. And of course, guys, this is a good practice as well for your IA, because maybe some of you are looking at problems in the production in a particular company. Anyway, with less waste, the organization's resources will be better used. Surprise, surprise. So this, the less waste you have, the better use of your resources. If you've less unused stock and space needed for storage, that's a positive. If there's less travel time between venues, that's good for your people, your workers. And if you have less stock, if you're not holding excessive stock, you're freeing up working capital. So we will go back and do some finance revision, maybe even before the end of the year. Well, if you store too much stock, you're paying for it. You are damaging your working capital. So by not holding this, you make your finances in better shape. So key message on this page: with less waste, the organization's resources are better used, and your resources, your physical resources, or your kind of capital resources. You're using your space better. You're using your storage better. Human, you are causing less waste for the people. You're not causing them to travel between different venues unnecessary. And then financial, because you don't have all this storage used unnecessarily. You don't save money there. So just a little bit about the Toyota way. I recommend you go. I'm not going to show this video here, but go in and just have a look at this YouTube. I have the document, this saved under documents. Go in and have a look at this. I think it's interesting to see. So remember, it's good to have some real life examples. Spend 5 or so minutes watching Toyota, and that'll be a good example. So final part today, we'll talk about lean production. So as they say in Cognigy, what is lean production? Well, lean production, they call it an umbrella term, hence the lovely umbrella. Lean production is an umbrella term that covers a range of techniques aimed at reducing waste. So when we talk about lean production, it's essentially anything that reduces waste. The most obvious one here, just in time. If you have just in time production, it means you're not holding any excessive stock. You're just holding the right amount of stock each time. Then you have no waste. Problem with this one is, what if your supply chain gets disrupted? And we'll talk a bit more about that later. But we'll just look at these three Japanese ones now. We're going to look at this, and then we'll talk about total quality production, or total quality management, and also cell production. We'll talk about that the next day. Kaizen will take us the first one. Yeah, we'll just finish it. Kaizen is the first one, and Kaizen is essentially, what it means is continuous improvement. So a Kaizen can be anything, any small little detail that improves your production process. In Maersk, when we worked, we used to have meetings every day where each person would be asked, do you have any Kaizen to give, any little improvements? And it could be something like, I mean, a small improvement. Everybody get their coffee before 5 minutes to 9 if the meeting's at 9 o'clock. You know, something like that. It's really, really tiny improvements. It's continuous improvement. It's basically, you're always reviewing the process to see how we can improve it and make it better. So the whole idea on Kaizen, it's more of a culture. It's basically telling everyone, any idea you have that will improve, bring it forward, because our aim is to continuously improve. Some days it's only small little improvements, some days it's very large improvements. So Kaizen, the whole idea, we present tons of ideas for improvement. The company gets to pick the best ones. Also, we're going to the floor. We're asking the employees, what is it that they think we should, how we should improve. We're not leaving it to people who are not involved in the process, but who are just observing the process. We're not asking them for the improvement. So Kaizen is essentially people who are working with this process day to day, come up with whatever improvements you think is relevant to try and make the things work better. Have a look on the Cognigy under 5.3.2, where they give costs and benefits of Kaizen. They're fairly self-explanatory. Just in time, we covered already. Essentially, minimizing costs by reducing or even eliminating costs being held by a firm. Some of the benefits from just in time, I always try to have about 2 benefits of this and two negatives. The obvious benefit, well, it improves your cash flow. If you have a just in time delivery process, you're not paying money for stocks you don't really need. It also drives good behavior. If you've a just-in-time production process, your staff knows they need to be very careful. They know they can't do any breakages because, well, you only have just enough stock to get you through the day. A challenge with the just-in-time, I mean, if you're in just-in-time, you're probably not going to be ordering in bulk, or at least not as much bulk as you would be if you are just in case. So therefore, perhaps you lose the big discount that you would have got from just in time, and or from just in case. And then another one, the risk. And this is what we've seen a lot of companies suffer that now during the COVID recession, because supply chains broke, and yeah, they ended up being short of many products. Kanban is, I mean, again, it's done in detail under 5.3.2, but essentially Kanban is a stock control system that uses signals or cards to ensure supplies arrive at the production line just when they're needed. So this is about having things arrive just when they're needed. It's very much like just in time, but it's focused on manufacturing and production. So essentially, it's just in time with having a board up explaining when things need to come, and it's very much focused on production. So there's a nice video on Kanban under the Cognitive as well. And then the final one here, Andon. Andon is a notification system. It basically alerts workers to potential problems in the manufacturing process. This is very valuable, giving early alerts, early warnings. So imagine an oil company, an oil drilling company, and remember, if they break down, even for just a half a day, it costs an absolute fortune. But if they have some sort of early warning system, perhaps they don't even call it Andon. I mean, they just call it early warning system, but the same idea. If they have this Andon or early warning system, they can anticipate when they might have breakdowns. They can look at the warning signs, and they can avoid these huge costs. Okay, so that's it for today on this video. I will continue the next day and do the rest of 5.3, and then hopefully we're back to normal on Wednesday. Stay safe, guys, and see you as soon as we can. Bye-bye.